What's up, guys, and welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to show you guys something that I've had for a while. I've done a couple short TikToks on it, but today we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So without further ado, here is my free Dozer. Yes, I got it for free. I'm going to show a little bit of it, and then I'm going to give you the background story on how I came to got it and what needs done to it. So this right here, she doesn't look like much, but it is a 1978 500E International Dozer. Compact Dozer, of course, weighs about 10,500 pounds. It has the 3-shank ripper on the back. This is going to be different than the C series because the 500C was popular. This E with the torque converter was only produced for a couple years, and I've run into some complications with that. I have for it, which you'll see over here, an engine that does run. So this is a running engine for it. It's a what is it, a D255? I forget. Anyway, but it's the same engine as the 500C, as you can see marked right there. So I found this. They're extremely hard to come by. I found one that was running actually in Missouri, and I bought it for about 2,200 bucks. So great, I have that. Now you're probably looking at this saying, well, it doesn't look like much of a Dozer anymore. It was running about 10 years ago, and it got stuck in the woods by my neighbor. So everything did function on it, which is good. The issue I'm having now is the motor's locked up. At somewhere along the line, apparently it was a good idea for them to take the intake cover and the exhaust manifold off of it to protect it. I don't know why, but I've checked the hydraulic valves on it. The hydraulic valves all work. If you put pressure and then hit a valve, things turn. The electrical system does work because I got a battery to it and I cranked it over. The starter did engage. So this engine still has a lot of good parts that I'm going to keep off of it. But as of now, I can't get it off because with it being the torque converter model, I have all the bolts off. I've tried pulling it out with a mini excavator. It's not budging. So normally you would spin the engine over and take off the bolts holding the torque converter, and it would come out. Well, in this instance, there's not going to be any spinning this motor over because it is locked up. So if any of you guys have any tips or pointers on how to do this, my next thought is, okay, go back to the transmission housing back in here. There's some hydraulic cylinders, and unbolt it right here, right? And then it should separate, you know, transmission shaft going into the gearbox. Okay, it should separate right there. And then I can remove the whole section, flip it upside down and see what I'm working with. There's just not enough room under this thing, and I've even put it up on blocks, got it like 1.5 feet higher. The width just isn't there to be able to comfortably work on it. With all that being said, I have all of the parts for it. If I put some time into it, and I plan on doing a complete restoration of this, getting that motor in there and getting this thing back running, because it would just be absolutely cool. So this is how you're going to work your brakes right here. So your hydraulic brake, and then these are going to be your levers for your ripper, and it does have a 6-way blade. I mean, how handy would this little thing be for just, say you wanted to till and grade out a food plot? It would just be awesome for stuff like that. So I'd rather not admit how long it's been sitting here waiting for me to get to this, but I mean, things have just been so busy with work. Those of you that follow my TikTok know all too well. But this is one of those things that I really want to get to, and I think it's going to be really cool because I got it for free. So now, let's talk about that. I'm sitting up here one day, me and my buddy are having a beer after work. This is probably about, it has to be about 3 years ago now. So sitting up here having a beer after work. This is my parents' place. That's where I'm at for Christmas Eve. And my neighbor comes over. He's like, hey, I heard tell you about that Dozer I got down there. I'm like, no, you've never told me about that. He's like, yeah, well, I got this little international Dozer, It's stuck. We couldn't get it out. Come take a look at it. If you can find a way to get it out, I'll give it to you. I'm like, okay, free Dozer, right? And it just so happened we had both my 100 horsepower skid steer and my 65 horsepower skid steer back at my parents' place on this day after work, because this is where I stored my equipment at the time. So we go down there and we see this little Dozer. The ripper shank is down in the ground, the blade is down, the components are taken apart, and I'm like, how did it get here? So then he goes on to tell me, he's like, well, I just had the engine rebuilt, and the old man that rebuilt the engine, he's like, he gets on there, fires it up, it fired up first crank, and the thing takes off. It was in gear and going backwards. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, takes off backwards down this ravine, goes down, he jumps off, it hits that tree. When it hits that tree, the hydraulic coupler, because they had, it's like a composite coupler that would go in between, there's a plate on here, and there's a coupler that would go between this and then the main hydro pump, which I have taken off of it right now, but it sits right here, and it's like a ceramic coupler, almost like a breakaway pin, right? So that broke loose when it hit the tree. Ripper drops into the ground, blade drops because they lost hydraulic pressure, it dies. Then they're like, great, how are we gonna get this thing out of here? They called a wrecking company, and the wrecking company was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be this much. They said it was gonna be like $1,500, which is ridiculous. And like I said, at some point along that, he's like, well, it was sitting there for years, so I took the covers off of it. Well, that's what essentially killed the motor. This motor had like less than 10 minutes on it when it got stuck down there. So I'm like, okay, maybe the motor's still good. And it wasn't. There's squirrels had shoved acorns down in the exhaust manifold. It had been getting rained in. I mean, this thing, it was locked up. I tried freeing it. I tried doing a pickle bath in the cylinder walls. I tried putting a wood block in there, smacking it with a sledgehammer, and nothing was working. But anyway, we end up going down there. He's like, I don't know how you're gonna get it out with 2 skid steers. So we go down there, we picked up the ripper out of the ground, we open up the valve, so somebody sat on the Dozer and hit the hydraulic valve, right? And if you open the valve and lift up on it, the ripper lifted up out of the ground, we chain the ripper up into place. We get to the front here, we do the same thing. We get the 6-way blade, we lift it up, and it had a roll cage on it at the time, which is sitting right there. So we lift the blade up, get the blade lifted up, and we hook that to the roll cage, chain it up too. Okay, next let's try and move it forwards or backwards. It was still in gear, so we get her rolling, pop that shifter, get it into neutral. Great. Now we are talking like a steep ravine. So we get the big skid steers and anchor up top. We get about 30 foot of chain going down to the 65 horsepower machine. And if you're familiar with model numbers, I had a Deere 333G and then a 317G, both track loaders. So we get them both hooked up down there, and we have one running to the other, and slowly but surely we're rising this thing up there. I mean, and by the time that 317 crested the hill, it was game over. And my neighbor's just like, I can't believe those 2 things pulled it out. I'm like, yeah, well, it helps when the implements are up out of the ground, right? So after that, we tracked it on home, and it wasn't far. I mean, he literally lives a few hundred feet that way. So we track it on back, took it into the garage, and then right then and there we started, pulling the motor apart, seeing what we could figure out, and we made a lot of progress very quickly, and then figured out that this is gonna require some more work. So hopefully I'll be able to do some more videos on this. It is my goal to get everything put back together, fully restore it, sandblast it, paint it. I have everything I need, I just don't have the space and the time right now. So once I get my shop built, hopefully in the spring, this is going to be one of those projects, and I want to do a full restoration on it, get that motor in there, get that motor repainted, all new filters, flush out all the lines, all new hydraulic lines. I mean, as of right now, the only money I have into it is the motor. If I was to fully restore this, and get everything working. It's you know, it's, I bet you it'd be a $12,000 machine all day long, so I can't go wrong with it. But it's gonna be a neat project. It's been in the works for a long time, and hopefully one day I can find the time to get this going, as well as some of my other projects. Man, shoot, I got these tires right here that have Alcoa wheels on it that are going on my semi truck over there. Let's see, how do I zoom this thing? I don't know. Anyway, my semi truck over here, might as well take a quick look at that. Another one of my projects. But I have those Alcoa wheels, so once I get those polished, it'll have Alcoa wheels going all the way around. Gonna get the lettering stripped off of it, maybe do a little bit of linseed oil on here, or buff it out, get the paint back to life, clean up the tanks, polish all that. It's got a 475 horse 14.6 liter cat in there, 48,000 pound rears. So again, another one of my projects. I'll probably do something on this, do a video on this as I clean it up and bring her back to life here. But you know what, let's start her up. Let's see how she does. She's been extremely loyal so far. I'd imagine gonna continue to do the same. Oh, radio's kicking. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. Sweet. Has a wet kit on there as well. These tires are extremely good. These are the only two tires that don't have full tread on them, and that's all right because I have 4 tires with good tread and Alcoa wheels. Get all these swapped out. It is a 13 speed, so pull just about whatever I put behind it here. You guys are more interested in this truck, I can do a tour. She's not too impressive at the moment, but work in progress, just like my other projects. So yeah, but she starts and runs really well. I'm happy with it. I only got about $30,000 into it, and it had a engine and transmission rebuild 200,000 miles ago. It's got 800,000 on it overall. Seems to be a really good tractor. I took it, oh man, how many miles was it? It was like 700 miles from where I got it to get it home. Drove it back all the way. So that's a story for another time. But I hope you guys enjoyed here. We go spend some time with the family since it is Christmas Eve, and it's it's 72 degrees here today outside of St. Louis, Missouri. So holy cow. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'd like to really get this thing going some more, so thanks for watching, and happy holidays.